Well, hello, true gardeners. Welcome back. Today, we are touring a garden in Fort Pierce, Florida. I wanted to bring you guys along on this specific spot because it is a low maintenance front yard planting. And I think the right plant for the right place was so important to kind of stress in this garden. We're gonna do what we normally do. We're gonna walk through plants and trees, talk about why we put what where, and list on the screen the plants and trees that we chose for the area. But before we get into it, I kind of wanna give you a little bit of the backstory on this particular spot. I'm gonna get Bryce to pop in the before pictures, and that way you guys can kind of a general feel, general vibe for this particular garden. And I say this because there was really not a whole lot wrong with it, other than it was just the wrong plants for the yard. My clients are travelers, they're retired now, they want to be out and about and enjoy retirement. So they're hoping to be out in the garden only every couple months and then travel every other time between then and come home to a well-maintained, beautiful, low-maintenance garden. This was done just a few months ago, so it's still fairly new in the planting stages, but I think that if you guys are looking for something in the low care realm and you still want that splash of tropics, then stick around because I think this video is going to be right up your alley. I do these kind of projects every single week. We design, we install, we design only, and we do virtual consults. So those of you guys who are needing some more than inspiration than what you're seeing here, then reach out to us and see if we might be a good fit for what you guys are looking for. But right now, let's jump right into this garden. Okay, so you guys, starting in this front bed that we have here, starting with the lowest maintenance thing in this whole front bed, boulders. You guys, do not be afraid to incorporate some boulders into your garden. They add a change of texture, add a little bit of oomph. Your landscape is going to grow around them. All you do is trim around the boulder so that way it's always seen in the garden, and it just becomes a place to rest your eye as you're looking through the whole space. Having some impact boulders, they don't have to be crazy expensive boulders. I love the coquina boulders. I love what they offer. Some of them have the holes in them where you can pop a bromeliad or an interesting succulent into it. It's just kind of a little bit of personality in the garden, and it changes up that texture with, let's all say it, low maintenance, no maintenance, which is ideal in the garden. The next thing that we did is, you guys probably remember the giant firebush clustering that was here. I don't know if it came across in the picture or not, but it was taller than me and had gaps all through the bottom because it was trimmed and trimmed and trimmed to try to maintain a lower type of planting. But it ended up turning into a wall, which pretty much walled off the whole front of the house here. It was just a complete cover. So that was the first thing that we did. We completely removed, cleared out everything in this bed and went back with a layering effect that the client can still see the home on, starting with our low material. So you guys know I love my Bloom My Minds. I just did a little touch of those right on the corner so that way you get that pop of color. Now you see we started with the lowest tier, so this is kind of an easy thing to build on. When you have Bloom My Minds, it means what you have in the back doesn't have to be huge. So we've got a little clustering of foxtail ferns. Almost every time I do a unique boulder in a landscape, I'll put some foxtail ferns or some agaves or some bromeliads, whatever the budget allows, to kind of frame that boulder, to kind of give it a little bit of a, a little bit of a highlight. So having a little bit of a halo of these guys, I think really added some interest here. And they're not too big, so they're not going to cover what we have behind them. So right behind them, we've got a nice grouping of king sagos. Now, king sagos grow exceptionally slow, so they kind of require once a year trimming. So I've got them dazzled in a little cluster here, pulled forward, back, forward, and that's kind of my style. I'm a zigzagger kind of landscaper, and then I chose a bedding plant to go around them. So they're going to be really highlighted by these golden dews or gold mounds down below. When those are trimmed to kind of curve all the way through this bed, they're clustered together here and they curve up through here and then back this way. It looks nice now, but when it grows in, it's gonna be like a sea of this beautiful lime kind of coloring and yellow during the summer. Now, those are probably gonna be on the higher maintenance of everything in this whole garden because every other month those are gonna need trimming. But most people have lawn maintenance companies, and the one thing that lawn maintenance companies do really well is hedge trim. So when you have a hedge planting amongst all your sea of your tropical plantings, you don't necessarily have to worry about how they're gonna trim it. They're not gonna scalp it or cut it too tight or cut it too short. A hedge of golden mound is pretty easy to kind of figure out how you want that. So this is going to be a nice dwarfed 2-foot sea of light lime green during the times of the year and yellow during the summer times of the year. Then we go into a collection of these Carissa boxwood, which are like a Florida boxwood. They're very formal, very, very tight, but I love their round leaf. They're very controlled, a great little planting, and they're just going to kind of give us a break between the colors, and that nothing shows off a color more than when you add green to it. This pop of green between the blue, between the yellow, and again the blue is really going to show off so much because of those little green guys. Kind of visualize with me, everything from the front stays low, works its way up higher, accents pop out of the 2-foot plant bedding here. So this is going to be overall a very clean design that really just has some vertical interest, but not overdone, because that's exactly what he was getting away from. He did not want it to be overdone. He didn't want to come back and it be 10 foot tall in this area, or even have things like that in this spot. Now, I will say we hit it out of the park with this house because they already had a beautiful collection of trees. We have 2 gorgeous Christmas palms here. We have 2 stately foxtail palms right at the edge of the driveway. We have a beautiful triple foxtail palm on the opposite side of the house that is really grown in, is just a stunner on that corner. Originally, there was a tree here, a diseased magnolia that just been struggling, and it was so close to everything else, and it was about, I would say, 18 foot tall. It was pretty enormous. It just pretty much took up this whole space, and it was never really happy here. So my client was open to just taking that out and really opening up this bed. Now they have concrete curbing, not my favorite, but it's working in the space. If it were Buda edging, I may have changed the bed a little bit, just tweaked it a little bit, because you can pop that up and add to it. But unfortunately, the concrete edging is here to stay, and you can't really manipulate it much. So we worked with what was there, but sometimes that's exactly what you have to do in the landscape world. Now we have 2 bare spots on the walls. So originally they had a lot of foliage right up against the house line on the walls, but having some impact that's controlled here, I think is going to be so cool. Having that lime green color, the blues, the greens from the king sagos, and then there's a big break with the quarter lines. I just think that's it's going to be such a cool look. Letting these guys get to about my height is going to be gorgeous right here. This just big pop of color. This is a nice protected area, so they're going to have a deeper tone than normal. Now, you guys, when you plant your quarter lines, I know a lot of people plant them at a good distance apart because they worry about those roots connecting to the other plants and maybe starving them out. That is not the case with quarter lines. You could actually pile these guys up together and plant them in almost like a bouquet fashion, because you're going to modify that soil. I mean, look how close these guys are planted together. It allows it to be so dense and full and such a gorgeous collection. I get so many questions on how do you keep your quarter lines so thick and luscious and big? That's exactly how you do it. They'll naturally grow out like a lily versus growing straight up. So they'll kind of push against each other and do that. And as long as your soil is good and fertile, as long as you fertilize, they're not going to have any issues because they're going to join roots, and it's almost like you potted them up from a small pot to a bigger pot, and they're very, very happy. All right, so moving on to the next area. So we have some dwarf collusia. These guys do not do what your regular collusia do. They have a much smaller leaf. They're the minis. They're called nanas, and they really stay compact. You really have to trim them very little, but they have that same cool succulent leaf. These guys just had a real harsh trim back, so you can really see that. They're a little stemmy right now, but normally they're full and thick and just such a beautiful tropical little plant. A lot of people say they look like little mini sea grapes, but they're just such a cool little compact plant, easy to keep. They're just a step up in size from these Carissa boxwood, so they're going to play so well together. And then because we have all the paired backness to the front, we get a little wild and crazy to the back. So we have the Song of India. I just love how they're going to encompass this Queen Emma. When this Queen Emma gets bigger, you won't see this base at all, because between these guys, when they get 2 foot, and those guys, when they get 4 foot, you're really going to have a sea of variegation in color right there. And then that Queen Emma is going to pop out like, somebody popping out of a birthday cake. It's going to be so gorgeous as that center firework in the garden. And what you'll notice, that one of the things that I really liked about this house is probably what you guys are liking, which is the stonework. I think that it's so cool and great feature on what's a relatively small wall. So I took the blank walls and dialed them way up with some color. And then I took the center of the window and kind of gave something more vertical, that's gonna be more of an impact vertically here that is almost gonna bring your attention to the wall instead of hiding it. So we've got chunky and fat vertical on the sides, and then something like a firework fountain like in the middle. And I think that's just gonna be a nice combination in this front area. And keep in mind, this bed is not huge. If you guys are looking at this space, so we really don't have a lot of space to work with in the yard, in this whole front yard space. This is outside the house line, right to the edge. And right now all there is palmettos and some invasive vines to that back. So I chose Brazilian red cloaks. I really want them to kind of engulf the whole base of this tree. So they kind of go all the way around this beautiful triple palm tree. You get these beautiful big giant blooms that are gonna come about 6 to 8 foot tall. And this will be the highest part of the landscape. This will be the ending point. It'll be almost like you have now reached the finish line of this bed. And that's exactly what these guys are gonna do. They're gonna really blanket. And I think that's gonna be a stunner as a nice backdrop. And it also helps kind of give a little bit of softness to all the palmettos behind it. We have a little clustering to the front of the Songs of India just to tie in with that middle area. And then of course, we finish them off with the Carissa boxwood. Now, if this is y'all's style and you like this kind of look for this particular bed, see how I have a Carissa boxwood? I don't have a whole row of them. I like to keep it a little interesting. We've got the Carissa boxwood, a grouping of 3, then there's a boulder and a break. Again, it's a rinse and repeat. It's following a rhythm. It's finding a pattern, working that pattern through the whole bed. I know that this bed size is different than the opposite bed size, but you still have to find similarities. You'll notice that the landscape bed just comes together so nicely because there's a flow to it. There's just a nice natural flow to that whole bed when that's done. So find what you like, take that, and then do a break. Find a centerpiece, and then do that again. Find your centerpieces over here, but continue with that pattern. And if you can follow through with that pattern, then now everything looks seamless, and better than that, everything is super low maintenance. So let's pop over here to the next bed. But before we do that, if this is the kind of content that you guys like, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and hit that little notification bell. We post every single weekend, kind of tours like this, talking about plants and trees. All right, you guys, so we're gonna work our way into the next section of the garden. This is coming right up the driveway. Now, these were not my doing. This was already here. They had 2 beautiful foxtail palms here, surrounded by some foxtail ferns. A lot of people have a very similar situation. They'll have us come in and do like big, nice, big looped curved beds in the front or the backyard, but then they've got those certain areas of their previous landscape, and they're like, should we tie in that to your landscape, or should we keep it separate? And a lot of cases, I do tie it in together. However, in this particular case, because of the concrete curbing, I opted to leave it individual, and I'm not hating it. I really do like it. This side was an easy, like, no-brainer. Obviously, there's plenty of separation, but this side over here, I had some concerns about, because this area, there was a little bit of a gap between here and a little bit of a gap between there. And I know low maintenance was our thing, so I'm always thinking about what is the lowest maintenance. However, my client was perfectly fine with keeping these 2 islands separated. I think it added just a little bit of that natural feel to a more manicured landscape that we have to the back. And then I also noticed that they took that same kind of stonework and kept it in the front sections, right by the front area of the bed. So it kind of tied the 2 areas together. And I guess you guys can see a theme in the way that I think. As long as you have something that makes sense, as long as there's a theme that starts here and wherever it ends, you continue throughout those key areas with that same theme, then you're gonna have a successful landscape. It's gonna be beautiful, and it's gonna work. It's gonna work low maintenance wise for you. And if this is something that you guys are thinking about doing and you have a similar situation, then just tie in whatever underplanting maybe. So maybe you've got a tree out there, maybe it's a holly, maybe it's a palm tree, maybe it's whatever it might be. Take whatever plant grouping that you have somewhere else in the bed and tie that in, because you can see underneath here, we've got foxtail ferns here, and it ties in with the other foxtail ferns that we've just kind of spotted around those boulders. But this could have been the same type of lower ground cover that we have in other areas and worked just the same. So we are now at the last bed in this front yard design, and I think it's a beautiful bed. I think it's got a lot of variegation of color. I think it's really going to bring a lot of pop. Now, this is the bed that's seen when people pull up the driveway, they park here, they get out, they go to the front door. So this is the area when my client, when Tom is pulling out and coming around this way, he gets this right in his face every single morning. And I think, what a better way to wake up than this. I think it's going to turn out so beautifully as it matures. These 3 palm trees, we were lucky enough to inherit. They were here, so we worked with what was here. Again, when you're doing low maintenance material, you want to kind of work with things that are more ordinary, things that have been around the bin a while. And that means mammy crotons and variegated arbicola. Are they always showstoppers in everybody's garden? No. In some cases, they're a supporting plant that just offers you exactly what you need. But sometimes if you take those particular plants, granted they have to be a good quality of that type of plant, but you take those common plants and then you introduce something really cool and exotic near it, then it allowed for you to have both by choosing a more simplistic plant. Because if you're trying to keep a low maintenance garden, you got to kind of be careful about the drama queens that you pick in the garden. I'm going to balance it out with things like this that are more common, that are easy to care for and not going to get away from me. Mammy crotons do a great job of that. They really round out, they stay nice and compact. You can keep these guys 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot, whatever your collection of height that you're looking for in this area, because they grow so slow and you have to trim them so little, you can keep them at a desired height as small as 2 foot, which is ideal. These to the back are the variegated arbicolas, and having them right in this range, having them around 4 foot is gonna make this color pop out. Right now you see right through to the back because these aren't tall enough, but once they get into this height, have a little yellow and green to the back of your red and yellows and oranges, and you will see those red, yellows, and oranges pop like crazy because of what these guys are doing as a backdrop to force that color forward. So these are going to be a great yellow and green screen for this color on this corner. And then we had 2 kind of big gaps. We have a tree in the middle with kind of no real centerpieces. So I opted to do 2 Cateria palms. They're only going to get 9 to 10 foot in this particular spot. They're kind of nice and compact at the bottom, opens up like a bouquet towards the middle. It kind of softens this back area. He didn't want anything like Lucie here, anything like too much of a barrier here, more of a natural screening because there's no grass behind there. That's kind of just a natural walkway to get back to the preserve. So he wanted a soft screening, but not complete coverage. And that's exactly what this is going to do. Now, just to either side of the variegated arbicolas, we have the Pinocchio crotons. These crotons have stolen my heart. I am using them everywhere. I love the way they look. I started using them about 3 years ago, but now I'm seeing them more readily available, and thank goodness for it, because they can grow in the sun. They can grow in the shade. And I mean sun. I mean sun. They can grow out in the full sun and really keep that spotted variegated color. It's kind of a combination of different leaves. I mean, look at this leaf color here with some of that orange to some of this leaf color, I don't know if you can see it, but down here with just that kind of variegation of what almost like a sloppy painter does. It's kind of like a combination of several different varieties of crotons all in one. But what I do like about them is they will get big. So these guys could get 5, 6, 7 foot tall back here and stay full from the top to the bottom, which is a unique trait when it comes to crotons. That is not something that you commonly get. You always have to have a skirt planting, mostly with crotons. These guys will stay full top to bottom, become a nice colorful wall back here, and they're gonna have the variegation of the light and greens on either side. So that variegation of the arbicolas down to these is just gonna be a pop of color. And just in case that wasn't enough color, we've spotted the Songs of India to the front of those. Oh my goodness, right around that boulder. They're all hairy-carry, they're all a little wild, they're right after my own heart. I just love how they're gonna connect together. And you guys, we do not have tons of these. We have 6, 3 and 3 in a triangle formation. 2 to the back, 1 pulled forward. Here we have 2 to the front, 1 pulled back. I love that zigzag pattern because my whole goal is to make 6 plants look like 1 plant. You want a kind of a connection. That's what keeps things low maintenance. It helps with weed control, making this your ground cover by itself. Once these connect, you're not mulching in this bed, you're only mulching along the tips or along the edges of the garden. This is all concealed, this is all dense, this is all full. And it goes from this height of 4 foot to what's hopefully get to about 6 foot. And then we've got 4 foot on the corners with the variegated arbicolas, down to 2 foot with the mammy crotons in the front. So you can kind of see how this layering is going to come in. I mean, it's going to go boom, boom, back down to the foxtail ferns, up to the variegated arbicolas, up to the tallest version of these Pinocchio crotons, and then down to the Song of India, and then all the way down to the Liriope at the end. So when this bed comes together, it's going to be just like a sequence of movement. It's not a huge bed to do that. This can be any island somewhere, any front yard anywhere. This doesn't have to be at the edge of a driveway. I think you can replicate this just about anywhere. Then you get a little bit of filter protection. You do need some sun protection to create an island like this, but overall, it's going to be an easy care island. And then we have a centerpiece of the boulder, and we've flanked an agave on either side of those boulders. And then yet again, a little clustering of 3 foxtail ferns to kind of give it a little bit of impact and to kind of tie it in with the rest of the landscape. In this particular spot, we don't have, believe it or not, as much sun as we have in the front. So I use Liriope, evergreen Liriope, that's going to stay nice and compact and low and just kind of give this bed a little bit of a softening. So it's going to do a great job. If they didn't have curbing, that would help that mulch flow in. So if you guys do not have edging between your pavers and your landscaping, use green Liriope. They'll do a fantastic job. Just stagger them in and they'll kind of knit together and hold in that ground cover. And then as that grows in, a year, year and a half later, you won't have to mulch those edgings at all because that Liriope will now become your ground cover. So it's an ideal thing to incorporate. All right, you guys, we have reached the end of the bed. This right here is a transplanted bird of paradise. We inherited it. It's going through a little bit of a shock, but it'll bounce back. We had this little corner area, so I chose to relocate it back into this spot. And then we ended it with the Brazilian red cloaks, just like we have on the opposite corner of the garden, the whole other side of the yard. But when you're looking from the street and these guys are 6-7 foot tall and those guys are 6-7 foot tall over there, blooming with color, it'll feel like the perfect sandwich. The house is just sandwiched in between them. So ending it where you started is ideal if you can do that. The rest of the garden, as you can see, is a complete repeat of what we have on the opposite side, and that is the goal there. We're gonna get out of here before we continue to melt. As you can see, Bryce and I are both melting. So if you guys enjoyed today's garden tour, then you really might enjoy last week's garden tour, which is instant privacy. This is going to give you exactly what you're looking for if you want to get rid of some nosy neighbors. So thank you guys so much. Take care. See you next weekend.